Well, it's kind of the passing of an era, I guess. Our era is passing kind of rapidly right now. We've lost so many in the last few months and few years with the.
He was there when the cameras stopped rolling, when the applause faded, and only the low hum of a guitar remained. For more than 5 decades, Jimmy Capps stood just a few steps behind Bill Anderson, steady, unshakable, and almost invisible to the public eye. Now, at 87, Anderson is finally telling the story he's kept close to his heart. It's a story that never made the headlines. One built in dimly lit studios, quiet dressing rooms, and endless miles on the road. A story of unspoken trust, of a friendship that didn't need big declarations to prove its worth. Together, they crafted a sound that defined an era of country music, but only one man ever stood in the spotlight. This isn't just a tribute. It's the truth about the man in back and why Bill Anderson will never hear music the same way again. It was 1962, and Nashville was alive with the sound of ambition. Bill Anderson, fresh from the success of City Lights, was eager to step out from behind the songwriter's desk and into the spotlight as a performer. He arrived at a modest recording studio that summer, sheet music in hand, ready to cut a new track. Among the lineup of studio musicians was a young man tuning his guitar with quiet focus, Jimmy Capps. At just 23, Jimmy had already made a mark in the Nashville scene. Raised in Benson, North Carolina, he picked up a guitar at age 12 and quickly mastered it. By 19, he was debuting on the Grand Ole Opry with the Louvin brothers. His playing was understated, yet magnetic, the kind that could transform a song without drawing attention to itself. When they began recording, Bill noticed something unusual. The arrangement felt more alive, more connected. The source was Jimmy's guitar, clean, melodic lines that lifted the song without overshadowing the lyrics. It wasn't showmanship, it was instinct. Bill instantly recognized he'd found something rare. From that moment, Bill requested Jimmy whenever possible. Nashville was full of talented guitarists, but Jimmy's restraint set him apart. While others sought moments to shine, Jimmy knew the art of support, letting the song breathe. His style mirrored Bill's own approach to storytelling, precise, emotional, never overdone. Their personalities couldn't have been more different. Bill was poetic and deliberate, Jimmy warm and quietly intuitive. Yet musically, they moved in perfect sync. They didn't need to explain ideas to each other. A glance was enough. One early session sealed their bond. Bill brought in a song he wasn't sure how to arrange. Jimmy, sitting quietly, began strumming a soft, moody progression. Bill stopped him. "That's it," he said. "Don't change a thing." That moment, Bill later admitted, helped shape his identity as a performer. In the crowded, competitive Nashville of the 1960s, their connection was rare, built not on flash or rivalry, but on mutual respect and a shared vision. It was the start of a partnership that would last more than 5 decades, changing both their careers and leaving a mark on country music history. From their first session together, Bill Anderson and Jimmy Capps built something unique, a sound rooted in trust, patience, and restraint. Bill's voice was soft and conversational, leaning into stories rather than vocal power. That meant the arrangements had to serve the words, not compete with them. Jimmy understood this instinctively. When they recorded Still, the song that would become Bill's signature hit, Jimmy's guitar was the invisible force holding it together. His delicate finger-picking didn't just accompany the lyrics, it seemed to breathe alongside them, turning the song's melancholy into something almost tangible. The record shot to '1 on the country charts and broke into the pop top 10. This wasn't luck. Over the years, Jimmy shaped the emotional core of many Anderson classics. Po Folks, Mama Sang a Song, I Get the Fever. He was a master of restraint. Where other guitarists filled every gap, Jimmy left space. He knew silence could be as powerful as any note. In the studio, his process was deceptively simple. He'd listen to a demo, pause for a moment, and then play exactly what was needed, often in a single take. Producers loved his efficiency. Bill loved his empathy. I had the words, Bill would later say, but Jimmy gave them a home. Live performances revealed their connection even more. If Bill lingered on a phrase, Jimmy followed without hesitation. If emotion shifted mid-song, Jimmy adjusted his tone and tempo instantly. One night at the Grand Ole Opry, Bill's microphone cut out. Without a glance, Jimmy stepped forward, filling the silence with an improvised guitar run that brought the audience to its feet. It wasn't rehearsed. It was instinct, built from years of understanding exactly what Bill needed before he asked. This bond was rare. They weren't just making songs. They were building a sound that belonged to them alone, a sound where every word mattered more because of the notes wrapped around it. And while fans heard Bill's voice, they were also hearing Jimmy's fingerprints on every measure, the quiet craftsmanship of a man who never sought the spotlight, but defined the music from the shadows. The road can make or break a friendship. For Bill Anderson and Jimmy Capps, it forged a bond as strong as steel. Touring in the 70s and 80s wasn't glamorous. It meant long drives in cramped buses, unpredictable weather, and playing night after night for fans who expected perfection. Bill was the front man, carrying the pressure of every performance. Jimmy was his steady anchor. He didn't just play guitar, he kept the atmosphere calm. When tempers flared or fatigue set in, Jimmy's presence grounded everyone. One Texas tour stop became legendary. The equipment truck broke down hours before the show. No amps, no drums, nothing. While crew members argued and panicked, Jimmy simply pulled out his guitar, sat on the venue's steps, and began playing. Bill joined him. Soon the entire band gathered, turning the disaster into an acoustic street show. Fans sat on the grass, clapping and singing along. The night became one of the most talked about performances of the tour, all because Jimmy refused to let the music stop. Offstage, their friendship deepened over the simplest rituals, late-night meals in roadside diners, quiet conversations during long drives, jokes timed so perfectly they could break tension in an instant. Jimmy's humor was never loud, but it always landed. They faced hardships together, too. Harsh winters on the road meant sleeping on the bus in freezing temperatures. Sweltering summers brought endless hours in unair-conditioned venues. Through it all, Jimmy's guitar was a constant presence, a reminder that music was the purpose, no matter the conditions. Bill often said he felt safer on stage when Jimmy was next to him. Not because he feared mistakes, but because Jimmy made every situation feel manageable. If something went wrong, Jimmy adapted instantly. These miles, these moments, they built something deeper than professional respect. They built a brotherhood, one forged under the harsh glow of stage lights and the dim flicker of passing highway signs, where loyalty wasn't just spoken, it was lived every single night. On June 1st, 2020, the country music world fell silent. Jimmy Capps, the quiet giant behind so many legendary songs, had passed away at 81. For Bill Anderson, it wasn't just the loss of a friend, it was the loss of a constant. They'd spent over 5 decades together, thousands of shows, countless recording sessions, and more private moments than either could count. Yet in his later years, Jimmy had slowed down, touring less, spending more time with his family. Bill assumed there was more time ahead. We all do, he said softly. The news hit hard. Bill didn't cry immediately. The weight of the loss was too heavy to process. The tears came later, while watching an old Opry performance. There was Jimmy in the background, head bowed, fingers moving gently across the strings. Bill replayed the clip over and over, clinging to the image. Jimmy had battled heart problems and other health issues in his final years, but kept them private. He never wanted pity. One of his last Opry appearances showed him moving slower, but his playing was still flawless. Bill wasn't there that night, but when he saw the footage, he whispered, he played like he knew it was the last time. The tributes were heartfelt. The Opry held a moment of silence. Dressing room #6, where Jimmy had tuned his guitar and steadied countless young performers, was renamed in his honor. His guitar was retired to the Musicians Hall of Fame, displayed simply with a plaque, Jimmy Capps, the man in back. Bill visited the display privately. No cameras, no speeches, just 10 minutes of silence, standing before the instrument that had carried so much of their shared history. The music world had lost one of its quiet architects. Bill had lost part of himself. For all their years together, the most defining moments between Bill Anderson and Jimmy Capps never made the news. They happened in quiet spaces, away from lights and cameras. In the early 90s, Bill went through a difficult divorce. Though he kept performing, his energy was gone. Jimmy noticed. Before a show one night, he handed Bill a cup of coffee and sat beside him without a word. That simple act broke the dam. Bill admitted later it was the first time he'd cried in months. Years later, when Jimmy lost his wife Ann, the roles reversed. Most people saw only that Jimmy grew quieter. Bill saw the emptiness in his friend's eyes. The morning after the funeral, Bill showed up with breakfast and 2 lawn chairs. They sat in the backyard for hours, speaking little but saying everything that mattered. They had a way of checking on each other without making it obvious. A glance across the stage, a shared joke only they understood, a short phone call ending with just making sure you're good. When grief threatened to pull Jimmy away from music, Bill wrote him a letter. It didn't persuade or plead. It simply reminded him of the truth. Your music helps others feel less alone, just like you helped me. That letter still hangs framed in the Capps family home. These moments were never for public consumption. They weren't part of award speeches or magazine interviews, but they were the bedrock of a friendship that lasted more than 50 years. The public saw flawless performances. The private truth was 2 men carrying each other through life's heaviest burdens, quietly, faithfully, and without expectation of applause. For a man who had shaped so much of Nashville's sound, Jimmy Capps never sought the spotlight. Even when his peers insisted he deserved recognition, Jimmy preferred to stay in the background, literally. That humility made his 2014 induction into the Musicians Hall of Fame all the more striking. The night of the ceremony, the stage lights felt almost intrusive to him. Bill Anderson sat in the audience, grinning, knowing how uncomfortable his friend was up there. Jimmy's acceptance speech was brief, avoiding personal praise. Instead, he spoke about the privilege of making music with good people and how the friendships he'd built over decades meant more than any award. For Bill, that summed Jimmy up perfectly. It was never about him. It was always about the music and the people who made it. After Jimmy's passing in 2020, Nashville sought ways to honor him. The Grand Ole Opry chose something deeply personal. Dressing Room #6, the modest space where Jimmy had tuned his guitar, prayed quietly, and steadied countless nervous young artists, was officially renamed the Jimmy Capps Music Room. It wasn't just a plaque on a door, it was a living memorial. The walls were lined with framed photos of Jimmy on stage and in the studio, handwritten notes from fellow musicians, and even a few of his old set lists. But the most poignant detail was hidden in plain sight. In a small drawer built into the wall, someone had placed a single guitar pick. No one knows who put it there, and no one dares move it. Musicians who use the room say the pick belongs there, as if it's holding a place for Jimmy. Bill was invited to speak at the dedication. At first, he wasn't sure he could. I didn't know if I could talk about him without losing it, he admitted later, but he did. Standing in that room, surrounded by memories, he told a simple story. One night, backstage, he noticed a young artist pacing nervously before their Opry debut. Jimmy walked over, placed a hand on the performer's shoulder, and gave a single nod. No words. The artist walked out and delivered one of the best sets of the night. That's who Jimmy was, Bill said softly. He didn't need to talk. He just needed to be there. The room fell silent, then erupted in a rare kind of applause. Not loud, but full of shared emotion. Even now, Bill visits Dressing Room #6 before certain performances. He sometimes places his hand over that small drawer, drawing strength from it. The tribute isn't in the plaque or the name. It's in the way the room still feels like Jimmy is just in the corner, tuning up for another show. Some honors are loud, others are quiet, like a single pick in a drawer, a melody only one man could play, and the space he leaves behind that somehow still feels full. For Bill Anderson, the stage will never feel quite the same. The spot where Jimmy Capps once stood, half in the shadows, quietly tuning his guitar, is now just an empty space. Their connection was never about cues or instructions. It was about instinct. Jimmy always knew exactly what to play, when to step in, and when to let the silence speak. Even in his absence, Bill still plays as though Jimmy is listening. He still leaves space in his songs for the notes Jimmy would have chosen. And in his coat pocket, he still carries one of Jimmy's guitar picks. It isn't for luck. It's a reminder of the man who shaped his sound, who stood beside him through decades of music, travel, and friendship. Jimmy was never one for the spotlight. He didn't need it. His legacy lives in the songs he helped create, in the artists he supported, and in the countless moments where his playing made the difference between good and unforgettable. Some losses are loud. This one is quiet, like a fading chord that lingers long after the song has ended. You don't replace someone like Jimmy Capps. You carry them forward. And as long as Bill Anderson is on stage, Jimmy's music and his presence will still be there, steady as ever.